So the first thing we'll do is call the roll. Alan, do you have that?
Yes, I do. All right, Commissioner Page.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Webb.
Present.
Mr. Gregory.
Here.
Commissioner Bess.
Here.
Commissioner Greer.
Present.
Commissioner Carter.
Present.
Commissioner Dobbs.
Okay, we have quorum.
We have a quorum.
The minutes are being distributed. We'll circle back to those at the end of the meeting and make sure we take care of that, but we don't have them for you to review, so we're not going to approve them. But welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is our quarterly Crime Commission meeting. This is where all aspects of county government that have a role in crime and public safety get together once a quarter to talk about what's going on in their respective jurisdictions, to talk about ways we can reduce crime. And we're going to talk about some of that today. But our special guest in a few minutes is Professor Thomas Abt, and we'll make those introductions and talk about his presentation. But first, I want to recognize Keto Bess, our new Director of Justice Services. We're excited to have Keto on our team. He was recruited from not too far away, but he's going to tell us a little bit about his background and his plans moving forward.
Well, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you, Dr. Page, for the warm introduction, along with your team that has assisted in the seamless transition here to St. Louis County. Just a little bit about me. I started my career in public service via criminal justice in Miami, Florida, which is where I'm from, where I worked in the county court system before a long career in the area of community corrections. I spent 4 years as a state probation officer with the Florida Department of Corrections, to include a stint in their internal affairs division as an inspector. And the last 23 years has been spent as a U.S. Probation and Pretrial with U.S. Probation and Pretrial Services officer, serving a variety of judicial districts: Southern Florida, in Miami, Southern Iowa, Des Moines, Eastern Louisiana, in New Orleans, and recently in Minnesota, Minneapolis. The last 14 years, I have served in the capacity as Chief U.S. Probation Officer in both New Orleans as well as in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is truly a blessing and a privilege to serve in this capacity as Director of Justice Services, and frankly, to be out of negative 34-degree weather at one point to in the 60s and today. I look forward to engaging with my new colleagues to better serve the residents and persons under supervision of the St. Louis County Justice Center, along with our courts and the public at large. And with that, I say thank you again for this opportunity.
Well, thanks, Keto. Well, welcome to St. Louis weather, and just wait till August. It'll be you might wish for Minnesota then. Professor Abt is with us this morning, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. He is founding director at the Center for the Study and Practice of Violence Reduction, is associate professor in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice at the University of Maryland, and he was a featured speaker at the week-long public safety meeting here held in December at Washington University, organized by East-West Gateway Council of Governments. And those meetings were an outgrowth of a crime summit that was held last May. But out of that week-long session in December, we, with a group of about 30 attendees, law enforcement, elected officials, and criminologists, the recommendation was for what is called focused deterrence, a focused deterrence strategy, and we're going to hear more about what that entails today. So I've invited Professor Abt to speak to us, but before we get to his point on the agenda, we're going to hear from our chief and have his report from the police department. Chief?
Thank you. Good morning, all. I was a part of that committee with Mr. Abt, and one of the things that we focused on was mainly homicides. So I'm just going to give a few numbers today in reference to homicides for sure, some property numbers, year-end property numbers from our department, And one topic that we always get questioned about, even last night at our town hall meeting, was traffic and how we are enforcing traffic right now with St. Louis County, in particular, expired registration, which is a big deal for us. So I'm going to cover a few of those things. So to start out with crimes against persons, and I'm going to start out with homicides. And at the end of 2022, we had, we meaning unincorporated St. Louis County and contract municipalities, had 45 homicides. In 2023, we investigated 40 homicides for unincorporated St. Louis County, a reduction of about 11%. Forcible sex offenses were down in 2023 as compared to 2022. 22, we had 260, 23, 215. Aggravated assaults, again, were down. 2022, 901 aggravated assaults with a firearm, and in 2023, 784, down about 13%. And if you think about aggravated assaults, those could all very well have been homicides. Those could have all very well been homicides, so it's good to see that that number is down. Human trafficking, I don't know if you could see those numbers up there. 2022, we had 4 human trafficking incidents that we investigated. And 2023, we had 21 of those. So that's an increase of about 425%. I'll explain that big number. In one particular case, we had about 10 or 11 victims in one case, and that's why that number jumped so high in 2023. Next slide, please. Again, speaking with homicides. Reasons behind, the 2 biggest reasons behind a lot of our homicides are personal feuds between each other and domestic violence. And if you look at those numbers, and for personal feud, 29% of our homicides were personal feuds, totaled about 17. Domestic, we had 9 homicides, totaled nine victims. If you look at the average age of the victims, average age is 33 years old. Average age of the suspect, about 35 years old. I kind of think those numbers are high, but those are the numbers that I was given. In municipalities, we investigate homicides for certain municipalities that they asked us to do so. Again, average age is about 32. For victim, suspect about 26 years of age. The weapon mostly used in these homicides, 82% of them is with a firearm. So we make it a point in our patrol is to get as many weapons off the street as we possibly can, but one way or another, they're going to get a weapon, and that's how most of the homicides are convicted with the firearm. Next slide, please. Crimes against property. Robbery with a firearm, about 13% down compared between 22 and 23. Burglaries are down again, about 13% between 22 and 23. And the reasons, I know at one time during the COVID year, people were at home. So we didn't have a whole lot of burglaries. People were there and they weren't breaking in. The reason that they're down now, I don't know. I think everybody in the neighborhood has a Ring doorbell, kind of scaring suspects away from breaking in their people's residence. Neighbors have the Ring doorbell, so they know that they're on camera. So maybe that's the reason down. I know that a lot of patrol that we do in certain areas are highly associated with police officers in the area. Motor vehicle thefts. This is a number that everybody is glad to see that those numbers are down. 2022, we had 2,953 vehicles stolen. 2023, we had 2,280 vehicles stolen, down about 25%, which is a great deal with the thefts that we were experiencing. Reasons being a lot of conversation about stolen vehicles. I know a lot of these Kia and Hyundai, they had special events where they gave out auto theft devices. I know that our departments gave out car locks for vehicles of those particular models. As a matter of fact, we gave out some last night at the town hall meeting. So we're glad to see that those numbers are down because we were getting killed with auto thefts. 2024, next slide, please. In reference to crimes against persons, and this is just year-to-date numbers, year-to-date for 2024. Homicides, we've had 5 up to this point that we've investigated. Unfortunately, we had 4 more that occurred just the other day. Obviously, they weren't ours. They happened in Ferguson, so that number increased of homicides that we investigated. Forcible sex offenses are still down at this point. Aggravated assaults are still down at this time, and so are the human trafficking. Those numbers are still down. Next slide. Crimes against property, year-to-date. Robbery with the firearms, down 17% right now. Burglaries, still down about 13%. And auto vehicle thefts, continually going down. We hope it continues to be that way. Next slide. I spoke about traffic. When we have town hall meetings, as we did last night, we answer more questions about traffic than we do anything else. Quality of life issues, and obviously, like I said, traffic. Up until 2016, our department did not issue warning tickets, okay? Our department did not issue warning tickets. Once we went to electronic ticket writing, it provided us the opportunity to write warning tickets. But even when you're writing warning tickets, that's still traffic enforcement. We just have a bunch of nice officers who give you a warning and let you go on about your business. And that's community engagement for us. That helps us. But again, you see the officers out there doing traffic stops. In 2023, we wrote 16,400 warning tickets to the citizens of St. Louis County. Highway Safety wrote the most of them, and that's pretty much what they do. Next slide. As far as citations issued, 2023, we wrote almost 38,000 tickets for traffic violations. Highway Safety, again, being the biggest unit that writes tickets, that's what they do on the highway. They're also responsible for the majority of our DWI arrests. The second unit that wrote the most tickets is the North County Precinct. And when you realize how busy those guys are up in North County answering calls, one call after another, you'll see that they're still enforcing traffic. In 2023, we wrote, again, almost 38,000 tickets. Top 6 categories, next slide. Number 1 is speeding. 2023, we wrote 12,000 speeding tickets. The next biggest area is registration. That's what we are hearing all the time now, expired temporary tags. And the fact that, we're needing to do something as a police department about these expired tags. And as you can see, in 2023, we wrote almost 9,000 improper registration tags, which also goes over to financial responsibility. If you don't have proper plates, you probably don't have insurance either. So they are writing those tickets out there. And the last slide is the year-to-date numbers of citations that we've issued. 23. Year-to-date, we had 2,600 tickets, 700 tickets. Right now, January of 2024, over 3,000 tickets. So that's where we are with our traffic enforcement, a little information on property and a little information on homicides. I'll entertain any questions.
Mr. Chairman, Chief, thank you for the report and for the good work you and your department do. I have a question somewhat unrelated to this data, but I think it folds in. If a woman calls 911 and says, I've got an order of protection against my ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, he's outside my house sitting in his car, I'm afraid of what he's going to do, What's the response of the police department?
If she calls and she states that she has an order of protection against him, okay, and we get to that scene and he's there, first of all, we want to see the order of protection that she has, and we hope that he has been served that same order of protection that she has also. He may say that he does not have that order of protection. He wasn't served for whatever reason. We'll ask her for that order of protection, and we'll read that order of protection to him. And once we see that he's violating that order of protection, we have the right to lock him up on scene.
How often does that happen?
Can't say for sure how often that happens, but I can get you those numbers.
If he does not, if he says he doesn't have the order of protection, didn't know anything about it, and you read it to him, you can then arrest him even though he didn't know about it, or does he have to acknowledge he knew about it?
He has to acknowledge that he knew about it. If he does that, then he knew about the order of protection. If he acknowledges that he knew about it, then he has been noted one way or another. He knew that he had that order of protection. And yes, if we determine that he is violating it, we can lock him up.
And what is he charged with? Because the order of protection is issued in a civil proceeding.
There's probably about a number of 8 different categories that we can lock him up for, depending on what he's done in reference to being there on the scene.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. Let's hold on other quick questions about department statistics until we get through Ms. Rapp's presentation, and then we'll talk about them in the context of that. And thanks again for joining us here today, and thanks for your presentation, and we're looking forward to going through it.
Well, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. Page. Thank you, Colonel Gregory, for that excellent presentation. And it's a pleasure to be in front of all of the members of the CJCC. And I'm here today to discuss a new regional anti-violence effort that we'd like your feedback and ultimately your support for. A little bit about me and the Center for the Study and Practice on Violence Reduction. The center, which is about 1.5 years old, is out of the University of Maryland, College Park, and we work out of the criminology department. We have the #1 criminology department in the country, and so we have access to a lot of smart people. As for me, I've been doing this work for a long time. I've been in and out of government at the local, state, and federal level. I was head of public safety for New York State several years ago, and I've transitioned into academia over the past few years. I've written a book on violence called Bleeding Out. I have a TED Talk on the same, and so very delighted to be working with the St. Louis region on this project. So I'm going to share my slides now. Can you see these slides?
Yes.
Excellent. So Dr. Page gave you a bit of a recap of the sessions, but I just wanted to start with what we all know, and so we don't need to spend a lot of time on this. But in the St. Louis region, there are relatively high, compared to other metropolitan statistical areas, relatively high violent crime rates. But for homicides specifically, unfortunately, our region is doing even worse. And as you can see, the MSA is 4th behind Baltimore, New Orleans, and Memphis. In response to this issue, violent crime generally and homicide specifically, as Dr. Page mentioned, we worked with the East-West Gateway Council of Governments to conduct this practicum on partnership-based violence reduction. So beginning on December 4th, we brought together a large group of diverse stakeholders. We presented the results of a regional homicide analysis. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. We discussed key principles for violence reduction, and then we answered questions. For the rest of the week, we broke into a small group of approximately 30, as Dr. Page shared. We learned about key anti-violence strategies from leading experts from across the country who were zoomed in session after session to speak with these local participants. And then ultimately, we put together a draft action plan. At the end of the week, we reported out on the results. And last month, we memorialized this action plan and distributed it for review and comment. And if anyone hasn't seen the plan, we'd be happy to share it with you. Please just let us know. It's a relatively short document. It's intended to be concise. And so let us know if you'd like to take a look. The working session participants, you can see here, the county was well represented, and as was the city and a number of the other collar counties, representatives from law enforcement, representatives from community-based organizations, and everything in between. As I said, we did in advance of the session, we did a homicide analysis looking over homicide data from the county, the city, and St. Clair County, which is where 90% of the region's homicides happen. And we learned a few things. This is just a few takeaways from this broader analysis. We can also share that analysis with you if you're interested. We learned that a small number of individuals are disproportionately contributing to violence, and that there's major benefits to focusing intensely on those individuals. We also learned that homicides are concentrated in a small number of locations, and that those locations don't respect jurisdictional borders. And in fact, when you look at who are the offenders and who the offenders and the victims of homicides, you'll see that for a good number of homicides in the county, there are offenders and victims in the city, and vice versa. Same thing with St. Clair. And as you can see on this map, which shows the northern border of the city and the southern border of the county, we've actually got a hotspot right there that crosses the jurisdictional border. And so, crime doesn't respect jurisdictional boundaries, as you all know. Finally, we learned about a small set of evidence-informed strategies that can make a difference when implemented properly. We sort of presented, and the other national experts presented, sort of a menu of strategies that the jurisdiction, that the region could use to save lives. And so these were presented. People had an opportunity to ask questions, and a lot of the questions were about, is this the right fit for the region? Why or why not? So ultimately, the participants put their heads together. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of diverse viewpoints, but people came together and we reached consensus on this action plan. The working group participants recommended a new regional strategy and creating a new collaborative effort to move the strategy forward. The overall goal was to reduce homicides and shootings by 20% over 3 years across the entire region. And the way to do that, the participants believed, was by engaging those at the highest risk for violence, working to keep them alive, safe, and free, while at the same time holding folks who continue to persist in violence fully accountable. As Dr. Page mentioned, focused deterrence was the primary intervention that the Practicum Working Group recommended. And in fact, they recommended a regional focused deterrence strategy. This is a well-known anti-violence strategy. It's been recognized by the National Academy of Sciences, the United States Agency for International Development, and many others as an effective strategy for reducing violent crime. I want to point out that no strategy is a panacea. Focused deterrence certainly doesn't work every single time, but of various anti-crime strategies, it's one of the most effective and most consistently effective. Here's a snapshot of results. There's many more cities that have implemented this successfully, but here's just a snapshot. In Indianapolis, it reduced homicides by 34%. In Stockton, it reduced homicides by 42%. In New Haven, a 30% reduction. In Chicago, 32% reduction in shooting victimization. In Philly, 43% reduction in shootings. Baltimore, 33% reduction. Now, the focused deterrence and effort brings together a blend of supports and sanctions. Basically, what happens with focused deterrence is a partnership is created between law enforcement, service providers, and community members. And they get together and they identify, using data, the highest risk individuals and groups. And then they confront those individuals and groups directly. And they send them a message, or they share a message with them. And the message is, we know that you are involved in the violence and it has to stop. If you let us, we will help you. But if you make us, we will stop you. And having made promises to both help and to stop, then they have to follow up on those promises. So those who want services and want to make a change for the better, the partnership offers them high quality services to help them change their lives. But for those who continue to persist in violence, there is targeted enforcement action. And so here on the support side, we wanted to make sure that the offer of supports was real and genuine, and that people actually had a chance, if they wanted to positively change their lives. So the working group selected supports and services that were fully informed by cognitive behavioral theory and other behavior modification strategies. And the reason they did this is because CBT is one of the most effective ways to get high-risk individuals to change their behavior. And what we see from the literature is that, yes, you can offer support such as, jobs, education, housing, and other things. But if you're not addressing ultimately the key thinking and behavior, often you can't see real results. So CBT is well recognized as an important aspect of supports and services. Here's some of the results. I won't go through them all one by one, but as you can see, CBT can work to reduce serious violent crime, and it's done so in a number of jurisdictions. And again, this is just a snapshot of evidence. There are hundreds of studies in particular exploring the effectiveness of CBT. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that there was a way to make sure that if we're investing in these services, that they actually reach the people who need them most. When we're talking about people who are at the highest risk for violence, either be as a perpetrator or as a victim, they're also some of the most disconnected people. They're not likely to just show up at a service provider's doorstep. They're often going to refuse services the first or second time they're offered. And so what the Practicum working group decided was, we also need to employ street outreach workers to go and engage those people directly to make sure that those supports that we're offering actually reach them, and that they know they're fully available. And this has been effective in other jurisdictions as well. In New York, street outreach has resulted in a 37% decline in gun injuries. In Philadelphia, 30% reduction in shootings, and so on. So all of the aspects of this strategy are not new. They're strategies that have been tried before, but this practicum resulted in the local stakeholders, your friends and colleagues, putting together these strategies in a new way that's never been done before, which is exciting. So the working group also recommended a way to move this work forward across multiple jurisdictions at the same time. So they recommended the creation of an anti-violence hub, sort of, somewhere to a central location to support all this collaboration that's going to need to take place across these multiple counties. And this should bring together stakeholders for inside and outside government, and include impacted community members in order to move this forward. We've already got support from the East-West Gateway Council of Governments. Last month, they voted unanimously to help us start this regional anti-violence hub. We've got initial commitments of funding from Greater St. Louis, the Municipal League, and the RBC. So that's very exciting. And the VRC, we provide our services free of charge. And we've pledged that as long as you folks are committed, we're committed to providing guidance every step of the way. So what does the hub actually do? What does that mean? Well, a hub provides the key technical and logistical support, all that sort of glue operations to make sure that collaboration actually happens. So the hub is the one who puts together the meetings, who sends out the emails, who engages experts to provide training and technical assistance, and collects and shares data. All of those in-between tasks that if no one sort of commits to doing them, they don't get done. Our next steps in terms of putting the strategy into action, we've already drafted the plan. We've already launched a regional implementation team that has county representation. We're pleased to have Beth Orwick working with us on that. We're in the process of sharing this draft plan and getting feedback. We're looking right now, that's what we're doing today. We want to get your feedback on whether we're moving in the right direction. And what we hope is we're going to create a regional advisory board, hopefully with some of you participating, to sort of oversee this effort and then to begin implementation. And so in either April or May, we'll convene that board for the first time. We'll finalize this plan once we've got feedback and have made any revisions. And then we hope to really jumpstart implementation and maybe get boots on the ground by October of this year. I'll stop there. I look forward to answering your questions and having a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Apt. We'll start with some questions. My first question is, how do you engage the individuals that you have identified as high risk? How do you choose that list? Where do you collect them from? And then what's the logistics behind the engagement?
Sure. So one of the things that we learned from our homicide analysis is that folks who have a particular profile are at the highest risk for violence. And, very roughly speaking, it's folks who have already been involved in serious criminal behavior and violence. And we do both a case audit and a gang audit to identify those individuals and groups. And then once those folks are identified, they're brought in numerous ways. You can do a group call-in where you bring in individuals together from the same or different groups. Sometimes you do that through probation or parole if they're on probation or parole. Sometimes law enforcement will reach out to them, or sometimes street outreach will reach out to them. But one way or another, you get in touch with them and they say, we expect you to show up at this place at this time to hear this message. Or you can go to them and you can do what's known as individual notifications or custom notifications, where you go to them, often, one law enforcement officer, one service provider, one community member, and you have a one-on-one conversation with them, sometimes with their families as well, about the risks they're facing and the importance of changing their behavior. That's a snapshot of how it works. I hope that's helpful.
No, I understand. Does anybody else have any other questions, Nicole?
Yes, looking at the regional anti-violence hub, I understand the concept of it, but can you tell me a little bit more about that? Who does that consist of, and just provide a few more details about that?
Sure. So currently, what we're exploring with the East-West Gateway County of Governments is that they'll host this. They'll probably hire a director or co-directors to sort of spearhead this work and have some administrative support. That'll be the actual sort of staffing of the hub, so that there's one or two full-time employees, maybe three at the most initially, to sort of spearhead this coordinated effort. And then we have a regional implementation team, which is made up of members of all of the counties that are actively participating. And it has folks like Juan Cox from the St. Louis County Police Department, and others. Representation from all, law enforcement, community, and those things. But that's a small group that pushes this work forward. And those folks do it on a voluntary basis. Because I think one of the things to understand is that no county or jurisdiction is giving up authority over its own people, its own law enforcement, its own priorities. This is a collaborative, voluntary effort, and the hub makes that collaboration much, much easier. But there's no sort of the collaborative can't force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do, and that's why we're coming to you, because we need your support. Because if we don't have your support, this won't work.
Question.
Thanks.
I can appreciate the collaborative nature, the holistic approach to it. But that said, it does sound like it'll take a lot of resources, funding, for example. What does that look like with respect to the funding and things of that nature?
Sure. We anticipate, a initial funding request that'll be quite small and might be able to handled exclusively by private funders, like the 3 funders that I mentioned before. And that's really to get the hub up and running and to start the plan implementation. But once we actually start, hiring, service providers in the counties and, supporting law enforcement and others, there's going to be additional funds that are necessary. And we're working up the budget for that. And what we expect is that we have already found that there's a tremendous amount of interest and support for this initiative, so that we expect that we're going to be able to leverage more private funding as well. But of course, government needs to have skin in the game. And one of the things that we've been working with Dr. Page and his office is to have a counterpart in the county to work with both the city and other counties on the services side. Perhaps some of you may know there's an Office of Violence Reduction in the city of St. Louis, and it's headed by Will Pickney. And Will Pickney, for violence-related non-enforcement services, he's the city's point of contact. We don't have anything like that in the county, and it's important to establish something like that. So we're hoping that small investments like that can be made in St. Louis County and in other counties as well. And we'll grow organically from there. But for now, I think that you can expect small initial asks like these. There may be larger asks down the line, but my expectation is that there will be private funding to go along with some of our public requests.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Shawnee.
Thank you. Your name again, sir? I keep missing it.
Thomas App.
Mr. App. So my question is, so a lot of the things, you even said it in your presentation, this is not something new. A lot of the activity is already happening, and I was looking forward that maybe the VCR was going to coordinate some of those independent entities so that they work collaboratively together, but not put another level of overhead on top of that. So I think about the crime prevention with Ms. Jessica. I think about what Mr. Martinez is doing, Sal Martinez is doing when he's doing that outreach and talking to the criminals. And even learning last night some of the programs through the diversion unit that Ms. Smith runs in our prosecuting attorney's office. I was thinking that this whole initiative was going to not reinvent the wheel, but leverage on existing efforts. And so that's where I'm kind of struggling at, to see this clear distinction between what your umbrella is going to create and what's already there, and how you're going to tie those things together. Because the small investment of the county to hire someone to be a crime prevention title could automatically be appointed to somebody that's already working in that field, that has that expertise, that could represent the county. And so could you explain that to me Is it just overhead with another level of structure that's going to coordinate existing and leverage existing efforts through other entities that's already here?
Sure. So I think we anticipate that this new hub and this new strategy is going to work alongside and align with other efforts that are happening in the region. But it's not exactly the same thing. And the reason is because we are doing a new strategy, which is probably a lot more focused and a lot more driven than some of the activities that are currently happening. And it's going to be cohesive across the region, meaning there's going to be a lot of communication. If a potential shooter is crossing back and forth between jurisdictions, this collaborative is going to make sure that people are talking and coordinating around those things. But what I would say is that when we start bringing in trainers and technical assistants, we're going to be working with all of those individuals and organizations who are already doing good work. And we're going to say, we hope that you'll work on this too. We have specialized training to help you do this. We have technical assistance to do this. So if you're already working with this population, we're going to give you some extra training to work with them in maybe a slightly different way than you've been doing.
If I can pull on an example that you just shared with us, because again, I'm just trying to correlate things in my mind.
Sure.
That ties to, and I looked at the police chief on my right, your left. I'm like, we just kind of talked about some of this in the town hall. I talked about last night. And then I went to the SLAPCA meeting about a month ago and how that coordination is happening. So the coordination that you're going to do is you're going to reach out to these entities and probably leverage what they're doing already to make sure if there is a shooter, using that example, we can say, oh, if this shooting took place in unincorporated and it crossed, we can met some of the other municipalities around that area, be aware of what this victim or who this shooter is. I think some of that happens already, but you're going to help coordinate that further, correct?
Exactly. A lot of this does happen already, but we can help make it even more focused, even more effective. We can provide additional resources to folks so that they can do their jobs even better. And I would just point out that this initiative is somewhat narrowly focused, meaning we're focused on saving lives by stopping fatal and non-fatal shootings. This is not supposed to be the region's anti-crime strategy. It's not even necessarily the region's anti-violent crime strategy. It's simply the tip of the spear to save lives in the next few years. And that's what we're trying to focus on. And so there's a lot of great work that's being done in the region that shouldn't be disturbed. And what we're going to try to do is harmonize our work alongside that.
Thank you.
Mr. Apt, I was at the last SLAPCA meeting, and I mentioned to them about this particular program that you're discussing today. And I asked them, would it be okay if I invited you to come to a SLAPCA meeting to pass along this information to them based on this another, focus group that you might want to speak to? They would be very interested in hearing about this.
I would be happy to speak to them.
I'll get in touch with you about that.
Thank you. Cheeto.
Mr. App, you talked about CBT. There are many products with respect to CBT that are out there. Is there a specific CBT product that you all are looking at that you find to be the most effective?
Yes, we're gonna issue an RFP through East West Gateway for training and technical assistance related to CBT. But I think one of the things is that CBT is used for so many different things. It's used in drug treatment. It's used to treat anxiety and all of these other things. What we'll be looking for is organizations that have a demonstrated track record of delivering CBT to high-risk individuals to reduce violent offending. So not CBT generically, CBT that's intended to reach a specific type of person and achieve a very specific result. And across the country, there's only a few providers who do that really well. We know many of them, but we're not gonna prejudice the RFP process. We'll have an open invitation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a
Go
quick
ahead,
comment.
Wesley.
I think that, first of all, I have looked into these programs, and I am very optimistic that as far as the outcomes and the proven outcomes that we've seen, and I think that for this commission and the stakeholders here in this region, we're in a unique situation with our 88 municipalities with 55 police departments, with the city not being in the county, that we really have to think about streamlining and working together. And I think that this type of program it gets us toward that end. And so I think this is the right direction to go. Obviously, there's things that have to be worked out, but I think particularly in our region, we have to start focusing regionally and looking at the programs and initiatives that actually have shown that they work, so that we can address those issues here.
Good stuff.
Well, did you have something, Doug?
Well, I just have a question. What counties in Missouri and Illinois were part of your database for the St. Louis region? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes, it was St. Louis County, the city, and St. Clair County.
Just those three counties?
Right, because 90% of the homicides happen in those three.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your help. We've been talking about a regional approach to crime for some time now, and formally in May and again in December through the East-West Gateway convening of our crime summit. But we would, it certainly has my support and the support of my administration, and we'd like to keep this moving. And I'd hope in 3 months when we have our next meeting that we can have a report and have a report at all of our meetings with the progress and the metrics that you designed to measure your progress. And I think that's one advantage of a coordinating effort regionally as we start to get data on the more intentional deterrence side, collect data around all the people that are in this space, and get some synergy and information around that. That's all we have on that topic. Did you have something else, Nicole? Were you raising your hand? No. Okay. The minutes were distributed. If you have any comments or corrections, we would take them now if you've had time to take a look at them. Our next meeting is May 23rd. May 23rd at 10 in the morning in this room. That'll be our next quarterly meeting. We'll hear from our police department with the regular update of our statistics, and we will hear from the VRC and how our progress is moving forward. But we're very excited to start putting some structure to this project. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? Yes.
No corrections on the minutes. I wanted to ask a question. Are we about to vote on this? Because I can save my question on. It's just accepted.
This, the minutes, if you don't have any corrections to the minutes, we will accept them and,
Cool.
okay? Yes,
So move.
Second.
okay. Minutes moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved.
Okay, my general question. For the next meeting, I noticed that Mr. Thomas joined us virtually. Will the virtual option be available for the general public to observe, or?
Are we streaming this live?
This is being streamed live to the public.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. That was my question.
Okay. Thanks. If no other comments or questions, we will stand adjourned and we'll reconvene in 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm asking no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.